All right, so in 3 months and 10 days, I turned 40, so I get to be the old guy here, right? Is that what this means? So anyway, glad to be here. Here's a litmus test for you as we get into this 100% engagement. Since 5 o'clock tonight, I want you to think about all the words that you said. Just think about a percentage, how much of it had to do with work. Okay, and if your primary work is at home, you're not off the hook. So since 5 o'clock, when you are talking with people, what percentage had it to do with work? Charlie's right on, and Scripture's right on when it's talking about work as a primary way in which we live our life, because we live it, we breathe it, it consumes us, it challenges us, it takes us to new places. It's a relationship, right? All of a sudden you get into these words for richer, for poorer, for sickness and in health, and you're like, wait a minute, is this a marriage or is this work? And the answer is sometimes yes. Sometimes we're more married to our work than other things, and sometimes we're less engaged in work than we need to be too. So there's a balance in what does that look like. So over the next few minutes, I want to tackle this question: how do I fully engage in this time, in this place, and in this position? That'll make sense as we go through this. How do I fully engage in this time, in this place, and in this position? So there's a story. Jennifer, I've known her for 2 years, actually 3. She's a high-achieving person. She wants to do well in her work. Everything that she does, she has a binder for, and she has a process for, and she has an exact way to do it. Some of you are catching on that she's a type A kind of person. There's achievement in there, right? Some of you are like, hey, what's wrong with having a binder for everything? But it's just a certain way to go about it. She wants to do everything with excellence, and she's been doing that for years and years. Well, 2 years ago, the program that she's in charge of at the college that she works got cut. So then everything changes. And in the midst of that, she's the only employee that gets to continue on or is invited to continue on. And so now she's working with people that are fired for the next 3 months, and she has to transition everything. Talk about a whirlwind for a type A type of person that likes to have things in control and moving forward. And she came to a good point, because quickly she said, God, I can't do this. God, will you give me a different perspective to see things and to do things differently? And God provided that. So her desire to achieve switched to her desire to engage with the people around her. Because what happened was people began to talk to her. She's inviting, she's welcoming, and she became not only the person to transition into this new program, but to transition everybody out through conversation. And so that is what, for her, it means to engage 100% in work. When I talked to her this week, she gave me this quote: my office has turned into a welcoming, safe place where people can cry, laugh, ask questions. And the staff and faculty that just fought with each other 10 minutes before, they both come into my office and they talk about life. And it's all because I intentioned my work to be different, to engage with the people around me rather than just to engage in the work and the tasks that I had to do. And so there are still days that I'm frustrated. There are still days that work is incomplete and I'm aggravated inside and I'm unsettled. But when I prepare myself to notice the work that God has done for me, I see a purpose differently. Jeremiah 1:17 says this: but you dress yourself for work. Arise and say to them everything that I command you. And so if we take Jeremiah at face value, there's two things. One, we should all wear clothes to work. Dress yourself for work, right? Hopefully that's the case. But the second thing is something deeper, not just preparing yourself for your tasks, but spiritually and intentionally looking at, God, what do you have for me to engage in this time? And so engagement, one of the things that engagement is about using our time for spiritual work. And so that leads me, that leads me to this first thought. The intentionality of our work indicates how we dress ourselves. The intentionality of our work indicates how we will dress ourselves. And so here's the litmus test for you and your time. Do you engage more in physically preparing yourself for work every day, or spiritually preparing yourself for work every day? Do you care more about, do your shoes and socks and belt match? And are you dressed for the right occasion? Or do you care more about what God has been prompting you to do with the people around you? That's one thought on engagement. Another story: Michael's a number 2 guy in his business. He got hired right out of college, didn't even have to go through an interview process. He's been working in the same job for over 10 years, and he loves it in some ways. He's got great capacity. He's got creativity. He wants to take this business to new levels, but here's the issue. He's in the place of number 2. And the number one guy has no desire to move or to shift or to go in different ways. So Michael's in a situation. He's in a place where he has to decide what to do. Maybe some of you are in this situation, or you're in this place and you can relate to him. But he's in a place where he has to choose to persevere. He's in a place where he has to choose to be patient. And he's at a place where he has to determine how he's going to engage in his work on a day in and day out basis, not knowing what's going to happen there. So recently in our small group, he blew me away. He said this: guys, there are days that I just want to walk away, but I know that I'm called to work not for my boss, but I'm called to work for someone else, and that keeps me going. It's what Charlie was talking about. Do we lift up our work to God, or do we lift it up to our employees? And so Michael is choosing to engage his work with integrity, and that leads me to just the second phrase. The integrity of our work indicates how we present ourselves. Here's the verse, 2 Timothy 2:15. Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. Think about this. Doing your best in a bad situation, that's engagement. That's spiritual engagement. Presenting yourself as one approved, literally saying my work can speak for itself, that I'm engaged. I'm fully in this, even though it's not going the way that I want to. And so in my mind, integrity or engagement is an issue of integrity. How you do your work truly matters to the people around you. And when you present it, you're not just giving a product, you're giving a part of a Christ-following testimony to those around you. So the integrity of our work indicates how we represent and present ourselves to others. So there's a question for you. What about your place? What about your work right now? If it's less than ideal, if it's draining, if it consumes you in not good and healthy ways, how will you fully engage in your place? How can you fully engage in your place? We're called to do it, right? Third story, Stuart, also in our small group, he's a firefighter. When he and his wife came to town 3 to 4 years ago, they were in the midst of a major issue in their marriage. And Stuart had made some choices. If he were here today, he would tell you these things that led him down a path of an affair. So they were at a boiling point. And yet, in the midst of that, he was faithful as a firefighter and working in a culture and an environment that is tough, let alone the undercurrent of that. Lots of pornography, lots of sexual immorality, lots of dangers and temptations. And so what do you do when that's your profession? When you know that you've struggled with that and yet it's prevalent for you in every moment? How do you engage in work and push yourself in those ways? The cool thing is this, is that Stuart, in his time and in his place and in his position, chose to use it as an opportunity for influence. And so when the moment was right, he would just stand and say, guys, hey, I'm just not going to participate in this thing. Or, you know what, this is my story. I struggle with this. And so I don't want anything to do with that. And so he got ridiculed, as you could imagine, in that kind of environment. But something else happened that was unexpected. Through the course of time, guys one by one would come to him and say, I appreciate you giving that testimony because I struggle with that too. How can you help me? And so if we're faithful and if we're engaging in our work, it creates an opportunity for influence. And so the third phrase is the influence of our work indicates how we push ourselves. So what about your position? The place that you're in, how do you use that for spiritual influence? Are you engaging it in such a way that doors open themselves up for new things? So our thing is 100% of the church, 100% engaged in hundreds of workplaces. And here's just a few final thoughts. Our engagement will determine if our work is an act of worship or an act of obligation. Our engagement will determine if our work is an act of worship or an act of engagement. I was reading Oswald Chambers recently, and he says this: wherever he puts us, our great aim is to put our wholehearted devotion to him in our particular work. What does it look like if we wholeheartedly pour ourselves into these moments? So the question remains for each of us in our context, in our work, in our situation, in our homes. How do we, how do I, how do you fully engage in this time, in this place, and in this position? Thank you.